Hello and welcome to Formula for Success. I'm David Coulthard, and joining me is a man who most definitely has more money than time now. After negotiating Adrian Newey's mega money deal to Aston Martin, it's Eddie Jordan.
DC, why did you have to put that little word money in there? It was going fine until then, and we were all sort of awaiting what this outcome is going to be. But you're just a miser. I said that to you last week. You just can't get money out of your head.
No, at all.
Now, look, the problem is you are envious. You're jealous. You just don't know yourself. Had you been managed by me, you could and would be in the same position. But no. You wanted to go with this lawyer and that accountant and that fella there just because he wouldn't take your money. Now, what do they have in Ireland? Penny wise, pound foolish. Always remember that, DC. That's my word for today. Penny wise, pound foolish.
Well, actually, just a shout out to Ireland, because whilst the Azerbaijan Grand Prix was going on, I was in Minneapolis doing a running show car event. The increase in fan base for Formula One in America is just really great to see. You know, a lot of positivity, thousands of people on the streets to see a great show, and a number of people giving us a shout out, actually, EJ. Of course, I slagged you off to them. I said you're a complete nutcase. But anyway, but the reason to mention that is I flew back via Dublin, which I've not done before from America. And we arrived into Dublin and there was a complete power cut in that local area. And I've got to say, the way the Irish dealt with it was absolutely brilliant. Now, you and I travel a lot, and sometimes it's a fairly underwhelming experience. But credit where it's due, everyone I came across within the Dublin airport was just, one, there was a wee bit of recognition, which was lovely, but they were just so calm, and it just de-escalated what could have been a really, tense situation for people. So well done, Dublin Airport. Well done, the Irish. But EJ, I still think you're a nutcase.
Mm-hmm. I'll make sure this is sent off to Air Rienta so we get you some free coverage up in the VIP lounge in future. DC, you're such a creep. You're such a creep. You can't get anything go without getting a little touch. Go on.
It was a brilliant experience. But anyway, right, we've got to get into all this. Azerbaijan, neither of us were there. Both of us watched it. I thought it brilliant Grand Prix in what is a brilliant season of Formula One. And we got to hit Oscar straight away. What a drive. What a feisty dive that caught Charles a little bit sleeping. And I don't think Charles will make that mistake again.
Well, we've seen it now 2 weekends in a row, or 2 races in a row. We saw what happened to Norris at Monza, and Lando was caught unawares there for sure. And so was, a mega star of the future, Charles Leclerc. He's no sleeping giant. He's big time in Formula One. And young Piastri came up past him. And you know what I found most interesting? And the reason why I said years or months ago that I thought he was world-class material, when he passes somebody, DC, he makes it stick. He's not floundering around looking for different angles here or being ridiculous flying across the track, one side of the track to the other to make sure that he retains the place. He did it all very correctly. He made one move, which is entitled to move, and he only ever made that. But, he had his mind made up. He had the mirrors in such a way that he knew exactly where the pass is likely to come from. God, I think he is absolutely stardust, mustard. I did write to Mark last night, and we had a bit of a conversation about the whole situation. Honestly, Mark Webber is in the most unbelievable situation, but then so is Piastri. They both have a most wonderful, wonderful atmosphere and team together that... Guys, we'll be talking about this as long as Whisper and your company want me on your program, DC.
Yeah, no, I think Mark and Anne, Mark, of course, we had on for part one of a podcast interview. We'll be getting Mark back on again in the future. But Mark and Anne have done a brilliant job with Oscar. He's the real deal, lovely family, very unassuming, but boy, is he committed when it comes to going wheel to wheel. So, yeah, you called it early. He's definitely... a man to watch for the future, and very impressive to watch right now.
Sure.
Now, you mentioned about delivering a pass and not getting involved in incidents. We've got to get straight into what was a really underwhelming result for both Ferrari and Red Bull, Carlos and Checo coming together. Now, it's been analysed to the nth degree, and some suggesting that there was movement to the left from Carlos, and that's where it led to the contact. But I think this was just, both of them need a good look in the mirror, because yes, there's no question that Carlos was moving slightly to the left, as is the normal sort of thing you would do as you run along the straight. But Checo's got clear sight of him and should have reacted. I can only imagine at that point Checo was in sort of overload mode in trying to win back the position that he'd lost.
Absolutely.
And he just didn't react quickly enough. So I don't think it's a clear-cut blame one. I think the two of them have cost themselves and their teams by just not giving each other enough space on a straight as well. It's one thing if it was in a braking zone or at the apex of a corner, but you've done the difficult bit and you're both just now accelerating. So, really costly for Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. That now puts them behind McLaren. How did you see it? What would you have said if it was either of your drivers?
Okay. For sure it was a racing accident, and I applaud the stewards. That's what they came out, and that's what I saw. Yes, Carlos moved off the wall, but he wasn't going to glide along the wall for all the way up to the next corner. So, of course, he had to move to the left. At the same token, I think there's no doubt that Checo slightly moved to the right. And, there's an area there. Look, DC, you've been racing a huge length of time. I haven't been racing at that stage or that level for any time as such. However, I do know that when two cars, whether they're Formula 4s or Formula 3s or whatever they are, any kind of cars, when they rub that closely together, generally the wheels touch each other and they move away without any kind of force or anything like the velocity that we saw yesterday. So I think they were both extremely unlucky. And I, as a team boss, would have had great difficulty apprehending either of my drivers if those two drivers were there. I think it was one of those just goddamn unfortunate incidents that adds more fuel to the fire, that says, hey, what an unbelievable season we have, because it brought excitement to it. Although, having said that, I hate to see the race winner going over the line under a safety car. Yeah. That really doesn't do a lot for me. So a little bit, when you look at Oscar, he's had a few very unlucky situations where things have been, the glory days or this or that or the other, they've been taken from him. So a couple of things on it just to round it off. I thought that Oscar was truly amazing. Well done to Leclerc, because he held it strong for such a long time. The two drivers, I can't really give out to either of them. I can't hold either responsible. It was just that sort of a thing. Further down the field, I suppose a good bit of luck for Russell, because, of what happened in the past when he was disqualified. So his podium was a bit of a surprise by his own sake when he was talking about it. And I have to say that we were all, it's one thing Oliver Burman coming into a car that he knew and had tested when he was in Ferrari and he finished 8th. And then out of the blue, what happens? He gets a chance in a Haas. He gets in the car at a very short notice. I'm sure a completely different driving style. And whatever reason, he finished in the points again. I mean, that's remarkable. And what I loved about him was when he had his ding-dong with Lewis, he was nobody's fool. He was in there fighting and maintaining his position. I have a lot of time for this kid.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just quickly stepping back on the Sainz-Perez thing, I think that's a very measured position that you've taken on it. I actually thought you were going to go, gee, it's a case of Dumb and Dumber, coming together in that way so late in the race. But I think actually you shine a light on the just slightly unfortunate the way the tyres touched. It dragged them both into the wall rather than sort of bouncing off each other. But anyway, disappointing undoubtedly for Red Bull. Brilliant for McLaren, because they're now leading the Constructors' Championship. And you, as a former team owner, you'd be licking your chops, wouldn't you? Because that's where the money is. You're the one that always mentions the money.
So, anchors, can you measure up the number of times that DC mentions the horrible word? My mother, when she brought up, never ever use the word money, because it's low, it's debased, it does nothing for the conversation. And look at what
your
DC
mother
is
never
doing.
said that.
Yes, of course she did. Anyway.
Another one of EJ's stories.
Oh, another steal for EJ. Anyway.
Moving on quickly, because I just want to give a shout out from the weekend, Colapinto and the Williams. You mentioned Behrman and the Haas. Brilliant to see those young talents bringing the cars home with so little experience. And I think it shows that the lower formulas are not always the best guide. You know, you get Utopia occasionally, like Oscar Piastri. He won F3, he won F2, and he's winning in Formula One. But you also get Mick Schumacher, won the F2 championship, struggled a little bit with Haas. So it's good to see that sometimes people slightly off the radar can come in and show their skills when you get to Formula One.
It's exactly how I see it. I applaud the teams for finally getting their act together, and that is that there's lots of good people all the way down the ranks. I mean, Colapinto at the weekend, where he qualified and then how he raced. Who's ever heard of a recent time Argentinian Grand Prix driver? When I said, where's he from? He's from Argentina. I said, really? And it turns out that the guy is a megastar. So we must not, in this world, ever, and it's a good lesson to each and every one of us, being blinkered does nothing for anybody. Just having an open view and having an open belief that somebody can deliver. And let's not just assume what they can't do or can do. This guy was mustard.
Give him a chance, exactly.
He was given the chance.
Yeah, and you know, all credit to James Vowles in doing that, because it's not easy to release a driver mid-season, especially the only American driver. But he believed that the Colapinto, from his work on the simulator and everything else, had the skills, and he delivered. Okay, we're going to get stuck in. I can't wait. Adrian Newey to Aston Martin. You wouldn't give us anything here on the podcast, which I've got to say on behalf of the anchors, I'm a little bit disappointed you didn't give us a wee tickle to understand that he was going there. You know, you kept your cards close to your chest, but talk us through that. And, you know, Adrian's someone that I've worked with at Williams, at McLaren, at Red Bull. He's, as far as we're aware, signed a 5-year deal. He's now a shareholder at Aston Martin, tens of millions supposedly in salary. He is a winning machine, 25 Formula One world titles. You had him in South Africa on this podcast. So for anyone who's new to FFS, then go back through and have a little listen to that. And it'd be great, actually, EJ, if you could persuade Adrian to come back on again once the dust has settled. But here's my thing. His brilliance.
I might have to charge a fee this time around.
Yeah, there you go. He might not mention money, but
I
he mentioned
use
fee.
the word fee. It's a different thing.
Okay. Right. I actually sincerely hoped, as great as that announcement is for Aston, and it's great buzzy news for Formula One, I actually hoped for his health and well-being he was going to head off and enjoy the remaining 5 years of his 60s. But somehow the motivation is there. Talk us through that whole process.
That was probably one of the key discussions, which is nice. And I wrote to every team within 5 minutes of the announcement. Just a little shout for the teams here in Formula One. Sometimes they are often, criticised and this, that, and the other about quality or interpretation or the value of what they stand for. But each and every team behaved so professionally. Right from the very beginning. If you talk about the Ferraris, McLaren and Zach and I have become really quite close as a result of all of this toing and froing. And of course, there can only be one winner. And we all know that, the same as Piastri won the race at the weekend, and there can only be one winner, and therefore, he is with Aston Martin. So, yes, you talk about the Ferraris, and you talk about a bit of a late call from Flavio, and there was a bit of a discussion with James Matthews, of course, at Williams, because that would have been very nostalgic to go back there in many respects. But, you have to shout out, which is what came across as a press conference, and that was that whether you like it or not, and when you see the commitment of what the financial resources, what you consider the commitment of the people and the people that he's acquiring and the engines and everything else, I could see how Adrian was moving in the direction of Aston Martin, because he saw in that, in my opinion, and we talked about it deliberately over a long period of time. The analogy, in my opinion, He wanted a challenge. He wanted to be able to get in there and fight, something that wasn't already on the table and that he was just taking over somebody else's great opportunities. He took a team that was invariably in this similar position to where Red Bull was some 19 years ago. And David, if I was to be honest with you, they were in 5th place. Aston Martin are in 5th place. So the analogy there is very, very linked, and so it's very understandable. So he was either going to do nothing, or I think the Aston Martin became strong. It was always going to be his decision, no matter what I'd say or what I wouldn't say, or what Mandy would say or what I'd say. She had a far more bigger influence over Adrian than I would have had. But the situation there is very clear that it was Adrian's choice, and basically Aston, the deal, the commitment and the fight and the passion and everything that you can say about Lawrence Stroll, whether you're a huge fan or you don't fancy him that much yourself. So it's a matter of opinion, but I promise you it's infectious. There is something there that I could see why Adrian went in that direction. And, you know, he'd rather be doing that than sitting on his boat. At the moment, I'm quite sure that there'll be enough time for boats for Adrian. He gets his new boat very soon, and he'll be able to have some time, hopefully before he starts there in March. But between, you know, there's not much that Lawrence can't get Adrian in terms of doing a bit of sailing or doing a bit of this, that and the other. So I see it as it was the only choice. In my opinion, it was either that or stop. And
Sure.
So that's where I see it, David.
Okay. Well, when we had him on the podcast, he mentioned that when asked the question about whether he could work anywhere else other than Red Bull, he said it would be like walking out on his family.
Yeah.
So, well, what changed? Why has he walked out on the family?
Red Bull, and maybe he saw something. Who's to know? Maybe he saw something a couple of months, a year ago, that was either upsetting him or a road of technical belief as to where the team should go that he didn't agree with, which certainly hasn't come out now. But, you know, when you see what's happening with Max, you'd have to say, you know, who's to say that there was something happening in the car, in the team, that Adrian wasn't happy with? I don't know the answer.
Sure. This is an Adrian car. You know, he's overseen the success of the last few years and the design and delivery of this car.
Yeah, but David, the design and the delivery of the current McLaren car is one particular person. It hasn't changed. Still the same person, you know, now that it's leading and winning races. So when it was at the back, it was the same car. You know, and I know that development takes so many finite little areas, and me being as a team boss, I would have to listen every single day to both engineers, aerodynamicists, different types of construction in terms of the tires, how they would want the car to be set up, to be done. And so it's never easy. And I have a situation where I have some belief that we all say the car is designed by somebody, and I know Adrian will have designed the car, but you know, he wasn't there to see, in recent times, he wasn't there to see what was in his head was going to evolve into making this a great car. It's just like what, you know, the McLaren has turned out to be a great car. And at the moment, you know, at the first 6 races or so at Red Bull, we would have said, my God, this is an unbelievable car. But it's not an unbelievable car now because, as I mentioned last week, I believe that Checo stepped up to the plate. And I think that Checo is the speed of that car. And we know how great Max is. So let us not be unkind to the team or Max or to Checo. That's where we are with that car.
Okay, well, just in that vein then, not being unkind to the team and to Checo and to that car, it's not unusual for announcements to come out of people moving, you know, especially with drivers and in sport. You know, footballers are going to move to another team even when they're playing. We've had it with Carlos. We know he's going to Williams, and he's obviously, you know, done his little press statement on that. But what is unusual is someone under contract to sort of be at the factory doing the rounds. I have to be honest, I was in a situation when I was leaving Williams, I went to McLaren during the 95 season and sat down with the engineers towards the end of the season to give as much information as I could recall. I didn't feel comfortable doing it, quite frankly, but I was asked to do it by Ron Dennis, and I was young, and it was where I was going to be for 96. And I remember sitting with Mario Ilian, who was behind the Mercedes engine, and he was asking about the Renault engine. It really did feel unprofessional, right? And there's my admission. To see Adrian there with Aston, to be doing all the press conference, to be walking around the factory when he's still under contract with Red Bull. He's still working there on the RB17, the road car, which looks exceptional. It just felt like a bit of a finger, a middle finger to the family that he's now leaving.
Well, there's a couple of things that I would like to say to that. First of all, I concur with what you've said. Yet you felt uncomfortable, but you still continued to do it. And
I did it once. Yeah,
I'm saying that you continue to do it. Is that a fact or not? Yes, it is.
Wait.
It's a fact that you felt uncomfortable, but you still went along with it.
Yeah, but I only did it once because it made me feel uncomfortable.
Please listen.
There's my admission. Like you, Eddie, you and I both know Adrian's a friend. And therefore, when you speak about friends publicly, they may not like it. But there's my truth. I've told you my truth, and I didn't like being in McLaren when I was still under contract at Williams. I expect Carlos will sit with James Vowles, and before the end of the year, he'll be downloading, because how can you not? It's like Lewis. I made the comment earlier in the year that Lewis mentally is at Ferrari. And of course, some people who think I'm negative on Lewis would go, you never won anything. What are you talking about? It's irrelevant what I've won or not won. But what is relevant is to know what it's like to be 1 foot in your next relationship when you're still in a relationship. And that doesn't matter whether you're in business or whether it's a relationship in the purest term, people that, have affairs and all the rest of it. You can't give 100% to two things. You can only give 100% to one thing. So
I'm going to defend him. Just please give me a chance to do this. First of all, my belief is that probably, and I must say this beyond any doubt, I wasn't maybe going to say this, but I would say that the arranging of the Adrian Newey release from Red Bull was, for me, and I'm not a young guy anymore, was probably one of the greatest professional, cool things that I've ever done. And I say that because most things were covered. It was covered that we reached, you did not hear a peep from me until the 6th of September. And that was the date given by Red Bull as to when we could or couldn't say anything. So I have nothing but admiration for Adrian, because he never said peep until the date that we were allowed by Red Bull to make any comment.
I admire Adrian. Adrian's a friend. Don't confuse.
No. But I'm saying is you were still driving. You were still driving for Williams when in the McLaren. You were still driving there. Adrian is not there. He's on gardening leave. It's a totally different thing. You're mixing up drivers and team people. Adrian is on gardening leave. He has a date in his contract, which was stipulated by me and Red Bull, or whatever it was, of the 6th of September, and that was adhered to in every single way. I can promise you that I don't know anybody who breached that. So the best of care was made to respect, and Adrian was fastidious about this. The respect that he has for Red Bull is unbelievable and is unsurmountable in many respects, because I think it's just there. It's in him, as you rightly say. He talked about it being his family, and it is his family. And it's your family, David. And indirectly, it probably is mine as well. Through the 30 years or 20-something years I know Christian, and 30 years that I know Dietrich Mateschitz. It was conducted in the most unbelievably correct way. It is possibly the finest thing that I've ever done. And the reason I say that is because it was arranged and coordinated in such an elegant way that I feel very proud about. I feel very proud about Red Bull. I feel very proud about myself and my actions there. And I feel incredibly proud about Adrian and how he managed that situation.
Okay. How do you feel, and is there a little tinge of pride, the fact that, okay, it's not the factory that you built when you were established Jordan beside the Silverstone track, but it's on the same site. The DNA is very much from what you created just outside the Silverstone racetrack. I was surprised when they were doing the construction that they didn't find anything buried in the grounds. So you managed to get away with that one.
Didn't dig deep enough, that was the thing.
But it's almost like Adrian's, the fact that you've managed him through this process and going to where it all began for you. Have you actually been across to the new Aston factory? And do you get a little twinge of, hey, this feels like kind of almost full circle on your career as well, now as a manager of Adrian?
There was a lot of that. It was at one stage, DC, and I'd have to admit to this, there was one stage on Tuesday as I was being brought around, because I didn't want to go until everybody knew where everybody was and everything was correct and everything was signed and agreed, and we complied in every which way with the Red Bull commitment. Somebody asked me a question halfway through. A couple of my ex-staff guys, there was maybe about 8 or 10 of them, gathered together and huddled in a little corner with Andy Stevenson, and they asked me 2 or 3 questions that they wanted to ask me. And I have to say that's when the nostalgia just momentarily hit me, and I had to pretend to stutter a bit just to fight back a little tiny tear.
Excellent. Well, look, like EJ, you've got every reason to be incredibly proud of what you created outside of the Silverstone racetrack, and it's now a huge business park.
Yeah.
I suspect you probably bought a bit of that land and sold it on, and again did a few deals and made some money.
Money. That's number 3.
Actually, how much money are you making out of this deal?
You know something? Even my mother wouldn't ask me that. It's very rude, isn't it?
The anchors want to know.
How much money? What is it with you Scots people? You're just always thinking about the deal. What's in this for you? How can I get some more out of it? Have I any further attachment to it? So, listen, all I can say
is...
is...
They're saying that he's on 30 million, 5 years, got a percentage in the
company
team that'll be worth X. So, this is the modern world. People talk about it in sport. So, okay, if you're not going to say how much money, what percentage? Did you do a percentage deal or did you do a cash deal?
I'm going to use the words instead of percentage. I'm going to say I was treated extremely fairly. Did I fight with them? Absolutely never. There was a discussion between Lawrence and I don't think that conversation took more than about 10 seconds.
Wow.
That's how it was. I said, Lawrence,
impressive.
This is what we discussed. This is what we're doing. I want you to hold to that. Are you happy with that? And he said, absolutely. The man is incredible, how honourable he is. And bear in mind, here's a guy that 31 years ago, I sat in his kitchen in Montreal when he invited me for dinner with all the kids. He has a daughter, he's a son, he's got Lance, and the wife was there, of course. And we went out to dinner afterwards with Mansour Ojei's brother, Aziz, and when those two get together like it's chaos, I had to leave halfway through because I thought we'd all be arrested. But anyway, and it's a great story. At some stage, maybe I can tell you about that. We'll call it the wine story. David, I'll tell you about the wine story in future episodes. It was a great occasion, great night. But Lawrence, he must be the toughest entrepreneur ever, because for him to have done Pepe Jeans, to do Tommy Hilfiger, to do all of the fragrances that he does, to Michael Kors, and then continue on, and God knows with Silas Chow what he has up his sleeve for further engagements, because the man is just a brilliant source for entrepreneurial skills. And please remember, I heard the first story, and his father had made some money, and he felt that, his time for using that money was running out. And he had 3 children, of which Lawrence was one. And he gave out a portion of money. I could be wrong, but I don't, yes, I can use the words. I understand it was a 5 million fee, which is a lot of money then and now, to the kids. But what you have to understand is Lawrence has moved that from 5 to from millions to billions. And you have to give full credit for that, because the number
Absolutely.
of pitfalls, whether it's alcohol or drugs or abuse of any this different kind, you can't imagine the number of people who would be there trying to nick it back off you. And, you know, what he has achieved. David, if our anchors ever were to understand what that facility in Silverstone is like, I'm not sure there's a Formula One facility anywhere, or motor racing of any description, that can compare with it. It's absolutely mind-blowing. It would be the biggest dream of my life to have been able to be employed there. Could I ever seen myself spending that kind of money? Not in my wildest dreams, because it's not insane. It's just a machinery. It's how it happens. And, you know, I said to Andy Stevenson, and we're going, you know, are these machines 24/7? He said, absolutely. So that was my biggest concern. And that's why I gave a lot of work out, because I could never utilize the machines. I could never get the people to do 2 shifts, 3 shifts during the night and weekend work and stuff like that. So do I see this team being a major force? And now I understand. I now clearly understand how Adrian obviously saw what was potentially available at Aston Martin. You can see why he went in that direction. And, you know, back to the situation, we can talk all night about it, but I don't want to bore the anchors. Lawrence Stroll is a Canadian entrepreneur. That's how I describe him. And we know about Apple, and we know about this business and that business and the other. When these guys get their head absolutely immersed in a passion and in a deal, then it's impossible to get them off that. And that's why I could see, beyond any doubt, as the days were rolling by, when Adrian was deciding that he was possibly going to continue, that for me, I could see that there was only one real avenue that he was going to continue in.
Yeah. Well, I totally concur and can share with the anchors, having spent time with Lawrence privately, away from Formula One. Super impressive guy, amazing host. Yes, you know, money can ease people's ability to entertain, but you've got to have personality, you've got to have vision, you've got to have commitment. And his commitment to this project has been
massive,
incredible. Adrian will, as he said at the press conference, will be tremendous value for money as he, you know, brings his experience.
He used the word
within that group.
He let me down, David. You know what he did say? He used 2 words. He said bargain. And then he said,
I bet you hated that.
Oh, and then he said cheap. And I said, Jesus, what's happened here? I should be in on this deal. I didn't squeeze enough out of him.
He took your pants down.
I didn't squeeze enough out of him. I think this is an occasion where, truthfully, the actual dealing was nothing. There was no argy-bargy. There was clarity. There was a willingness to perform on both sides. That's all I can say. And my role, apart from perhaps putting them together, ironically, you know, when it was announced at Monaco last year that Adrian was going to possibly look for another team, funny enough, a place that you and I have been to, the African Queen, I was having dinner and it was a call from Lawrence Stroll, and would I meet him on the Thursday? And I did. And I went along to his meeting where he had his financial guy and his accountant guy and his lawyer guy. And, you know, Robert and Anthony and Lawrence as a team, what they presented to me was nothing short of something like an acquisition of the Bank of England or something like that. It was so clinical, so clear, so professional. These guys know how to deliver. And that's what I'm saying to you. The value of him being an entrepreneur has huge ramifications, positive ramifications.
Well, actually, EJ, the great thing about that, if you look at the success of teams through time, more often than not, it's been when they've had an entrepreneur behind them. The way the teams have grown up, whenever you have a corporate trying to run a team, it tends not to be successful. You cannot do the hard decisions by committee. It needs to have a captain of the ship, the buck stops, and that's exactly what we're living out here. And I genuinely wish them all the best with that continued journey, because despite what you said at the beginning, I have no jealousy towards money or you know, anything like that. I admire success. I admire what you've done with your life's journey and your work. I admire Adrian tremendously, and my life has been made all the better through his skills and his delivery.
I think another thing that really, Adrian, if the truth was really inside and we were able to dig deep, which we can do in the future, but I think Honda being a partner from 26 will be important to Adrian, because he believes to have a strategic manufacturer online is crucially important. To have Andy Cowell there, who we know, I mean, DC, you know Andy really well. You can tell the punters and the anchors exactly.
Brilliant man.
What a brilliant man. And he was the man behind all of those successes at Mercedes, like a genius. And that hasn't gone unnoticed, that he's obviously now in the fold with them, and with Honda and with Adrian and with the people that he will get together. I've no doubt that it's good. It's going to shake it up a bit, because other teams are going to have to get up off their hind legs and tackle. Do I think that they can win a world championship? There's a lot of questions to be answered there. There's all sorts of things about people, about drivers, about other. But do I think that people will be attracted to Aston Martin because Adrian Newey is there? Beyond any doubt, David. Beyond any doubt. Sure. You just
Absolutely.
Don't know. So from that point of view, strategically, when I hear that Lawrence said bargain, cheap, and words like that, I don't think he was belittling Adrian.
Your negotiating skills.
I think what he was doing was saying that he has this vision, and it's a passionate vision, of which Adrian is a major part to it. And it's not just the pencil drawing on the line. It's Adrian Newey in a different capacity. Hence, he's a shareholder. I mean, the stock and the position that he holds with inside the team is massive. And it breaks new ground. I mean, it's a hallelujah time for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, I think I've said on this podcast before that if I was at Williams at the time, I would have given him equity. If I was at McLaren at the time, I would have given him equity. Yeah. Arguably, Red Bull should have. Adrian has earned the right over his time in Formula One to be part of the team. To be a team owner. Ross Brawn was effectively given a team by Honda because they were like, okay, this isn't working for us. And then he did an amazing job with his team there to, hit it with a world championship and then sell it on to Mercedes. But Adrian thoroughly deserves that.
Come on, let's go. What's next on the list? We're finished with Adrian now. Thank God for that.
What's next on the list is that we have to wrap this up because, our listeners, their time is precious. So I'm just going to shout it out to our anchors that that's all we have time for today. And we could go on for hours on this, probably you and I disagreeing on some things. But as you always say, EJ, time is money and you don't like wasting a single dime. We have, however, just released a very special Answer the Anchors bonus episode where EJ answers all your Adrian-related questions.
I'd lock him in a room. I wouldn't let him out of it until he'd won a world championship. Sex on a stick, isn't that what that is? It's designing a car, for heaven's sake. The answer is clearly, fuck off, no.
So if you want to dig even deeper into the deal of the century, join the FFS Club and become a massive anchor. You'll get bonus episodes, sneak previews, and your chance to join one of our future podcast recordings. Just head to ffs.supportingcast.fm to sign up now. That's ffs.supportingcast.fm. Remember, you can get in touch with us on social media at F1 for Success and send your questions in to ffs@whisper.tv. EJ, we've taken a lot of our anchors' time. We've taken a lot of your time. So we're going to wrap it up in the time-honoured tradition. Growl away, my friend.
That's a much bigger growl than before. Maybe Adrian Money's remuneration had something to do with it.